My name is Lean Tran Layton, and I'm a practicing immigration attorney in the United States. And I'm an immigrant myself. Throughout my life and career, I've had the privilege of meeting people from all over the world who have immigrated to the United States. And I've heard some amazing stories, and I want you to hear them too. These stories will make you feel a range of emotions, but most of all, I hope you will be left feeling inspired. Welcome to the Immigrant Voice. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm always so excited to talk to our guests and to hear their unique stories. So why don't you tell our listeners your name, what state you live in, and how long you've been in the United States? Oh, and also, of course, where you were born, what country?
Sure. Well, my name is Simón. I was born and raised in San Salvador, in El Salvador. We immigrated, interestingly, I think we immigrated today, in fact.
Oh, really? November?
It was early November.
Okay.
It was early November 1986. It might be the anniversary.
Oh, wow.
I've not thought about that, but I think it might be. We immigrated into Los Angeles, and I was 12 years old at the time. So we came up through Mexico and through the southern border.
So at 12, obviously you were old enough to remember quite a bit about your experience. So walk us through, what was your life like in El Salvador?
Well, it was obviously childhood. So a lot of it revolved around what was happening in school. I went to a parochial school. And frankly, what I do remember about life there is obviously it's in the middle of a civil war, so it's pretty violent. You see the violence. I mean, you hear the gunshots, you see the casualties, you see the property destruction. I mean, that stuff I do remember very clearly. But I also do remember going to the countryside to visit my grandfather. I remember going to the little towns where my mother grew up. These are out in the countryside and very, very humble places. Living in adobe houses with dirt floors, that kind of stuff. So I do recall that. I remember one of the things I remember as a kid was climbing trees. I was good at climbing trees. I climbed mango trees, ate mangoes.
Oh, nice.
Plucked them off right off the tree and ate them. And played at the beach quite a bit. We used to go to the beach. It wasn't terribly far from home. So that was, it was happy. As a child, you don't really know what's going on around you, except for, you hear things that you shouldn't be out after dark because of the war, or even in the daytime sometimes when there was an offensive. But other than that, it was, rode my bike and got my bike stolen and played a lot of soccer.
What do you remember about your house growing up?
It was blue on the outside, and it was light blue walls. My mother, in fact, just came back from visiting El Salvador. She was just there last week, and I was able to video chat with her, and so I got to see the house again. But I remember my father had a shoe place. They made and repaired shoes. So he's a cobbler. He was a shoemaker. So in the front part of the house, he'd have his shop where he would have his workers be working on shoes, repairing them, making them, and whatever. My mother was a seamstress, and so she had like a little room or little corner of a room where she would sew dresses and repair and mend dresses and things like that. Mend our clothes, because I'd get, hole in my knee or something like that. She would fix it or fix my uniform. And so we had a section of the house that was exclusively for my parents to work. And the rest of the house was there, obviously your dining room and bedrooms and things. But it was like most everyone there, it's a very small house. It was a very modest house. We didn't have we had a television, which was probably the most luxurious item we had. And we did have, this is kind of trivial now, but through my uncle who was in the military, he was able to get us a phone line. So our home we had a telephone, which my dad rented out. So it was sort of like a quasi-public phone. People would come in and pay the rate, and they could use our phone to call or receive phone calls. And so that was something that I remember about the house. Most people didn't have a telephone. There wasn't a way to communicate. It wasn't a telephone, a home phone. That was not something that was common. Interestingly, because of the war and because there was a lack of infrastructure there, when everything started becoming mobile phoning, telecommunications being wireless, El Salvador just kind of skipped this whole infrastructure. They went from having no landlines to everyone having a mobile phone. And so when I was there last, you'd have these little old ladies selling tomatoes and avocados on the street, street market. And they would be texting and phoning a friend, hey, can you bring me more avocados? And so it went from no communication to 21st century communication.
That's really interesting. So it sounds like for the most part, your childhood was pretty normal, happy childhood. You did mention that you did see some things that you probably wouldn't want a child to see. Do you remember seeing those things and the emotions that you felt?
Yeah, I mean, I did see things. I would run errands with my dad. He would take me along, and when he would go buy leather or glue or supplies for the shop or something, or deliver shoes. And so from time to time, we didn't have a car, so it was always using public buses. Or on the rare occasion, he would get a taxi cab. But when you'd go through these, you get stopped at checkpoints, or especially if we went to visit his father, my grandfather, there would be checkpoints along the way, and they would come in and search the bus and question people, pull people out. And of course, you're a child, you don't know what's going on. But anytime you see somebody in uniform with heavy guns and stuff, you kind of think you're a little intimidated for one, but also confused. So I do recall those kinds of things. And it wasn't just your uniformed guards who would do this. You'd have individuals in civilian clothing. Obviously, the guerrillas who would be fighting the military, they would do the same thing. They wouldn't have set checkpoints per se, but random checkpoints. And so you see these kinds of things, and obviously you see the violence, you see the gunshots, you see people be shot, and all those things I do recall. The feelings I got, frankly, was shock more than anything. And fear, of course, as a child. You don't know what's happening. I think that was the thing that was mostly going through my head, like, what is going on? And how do I get away from this so I'm not hurt? Those are the kinds of things that were going through my mind. I never myself felt like, my dad was going to be killed or anything like that. Maybe that was just denial on my part. But I think the one thing that sort of the last straw, if you will, was that I was coming out of school. School was dismissed. We were leaving school. We were walking home, and I was walking along the side of the school. And there's a wall on my right, and my friends were some in the front. I had a buddy to my left, other kids around, and I noticed a truck sort of pull up. A pickup truck with like a canvas in the back. And I noticed people jumping out of the truck and grabbing kids in front of me. And they kind of grabbed the kid next to me.
Oh my gosh.
And as soon as I saw them coming out, I just bolted and I ran away. And I just ran straight home. I never looked back, and I just booked it. And I was, when I was young, I was fast. I would race my friends, foot races, and I would always win. I was kind of fast that way. And I don't know if that was kind of saved me that day.
Yeah.
But certainly when when that was the most traumatic thing, when I saw my friends,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
and of course you're 12 years old, you're in sixth grade, and you see kids getting nabbed, and I never saw them again. I don't know what happened to them.
Wow.
And so when I went home, I went straight home, and my dad could tell that something was wrong with me. And I told him, they're up there grabbing kids, and so he asked me where my sisters and my brother were. And I had no idea. I left them behind. And of course he went out trying to see, and of course they all came home just fine. But that was the end. That was the last thing. And then soon after that, my dad started making phone calls, making arrangements for us to leave.
Yeah. My gosh, I can't even imagine. That's crazy. How did your parents explain to you what was going on in the country during that time?
I don't know that they did. In fact, they didn't. I don't recall that they ever talked about what was going on in the country. I do. When things are happening around you, where there's a lot of, I knew that in my father's hometown and in that part of the country, that the war was more in your face. It was certainly more dangerous. And so, that was sort of the battlefront, if you will. And so when we would go there, and when I say we, it was mostly me. I don't remember my younger siblings ever going. My father would take me as the oldest kid, and we'd be there, and I would think, you'd see like the bullet holes on walls, or you see the light poles, for example. They might be wood or they might be cement, and it would have big chunks of it missing, and from where bullets had taken pieces out of it. So I recall that, and I knew certainly without my parents telling me that our country was at war. That was clear. My dad was a newspaper subscriber, so he would get newspapers. And at the time, there was a morning paper and an afternoon paper. He would get them both. And it was interesting, and I would see him read. And of course, as a kid, impressionable, your dad was a lot to you. So if my dad read the paper, then I wanted to read the paper too. And so I actually started reading the newspaper. And I could tell that the newspaper had pictures and saying what was going on, and so many people are missing. And in the morning and in the afternoon, you would see sort of updated type of news. And I could tell pretty early on that the newspapers took on different interpretations of similar events. And I could tell that in hindsight now, I could tell, well, my dad was sort of trying to get this balance, or trying to get differing views or reporting of the same thing in different ways. And I thought that was pretty wise of him to do that at the time. Of course, I didn't know this until much later, but I could see that. And he was very informed. So I knew what was going on in the country. I knew politically it was broken. I know that my mother left our family. We joined after 20 months apart. So she had left the family to come to the U.S. first. So she immigrated first. And so our family was apart for that, almost 2 years. And of course, you're a child of 10 years old and your mother leaves, that leaves a pretty big gap. Yeah, for sure. So after that incident with your friend being taken, and then your dad finds out about it, and then he starts making all these phone calls, what do you remember about the decision of your dad to be like, okay, we're leaving this country, we're going to the U.S.? Like, what do you remember about all of that? Not much, frankly. I knew my mother had gone to the U.S. and the idea was perhaps to reunite, but I never thought that we would come to the U.S. I thought my mother would sort of work, make some money, send some money back, maybe come back to El Salvador, and that was where home was. I never thought we would live anywhere else. And it's not like we were well off by any means, but that was home. So when my dad told us that we were going to go to the U.S., he basically just said, we're going to be leaving. And that was a shock to the system. I didn't know what that meant until we were actually like, oh, we're going to get on a plane and leave, leave. And, we're not going to stay. Then my dad didn't really say anything, or my mother for that matter. Why did your mom leave first? I don't know that.
Do you remember talking to her, like on the phone or anything during that time?
I do remember talking to her. I do remember getting Christmas gifts from her, toys that she had bought in the U.S. and sent them back. And of course, as a kid, you show them off. I got this He-Man doll from the United States, and you don't have one, kind of thing. Trucks and Transformer trucks and things like that. But I don't know why she left first. In fact, that's been one of those things. My father's passed away now. In fact, he passed away a few months ago.
I'm sorry about that.
And I wish I would have asked him.
Yeah.
I spent time with my mother, and maybe it's a sensitive part that I don't want to intrude. Why did you leave us?
Right.
Why did you leave your family? Why you? Why not dad? Those are questions I wish I could ask, and I haven't brought myself. I haven't mustered up the courage to ask my mother those things for fear of bringing up unpleasant memories for her.
Right.
I can only assume some things. Having been married, it's not all roses. There's a lot of tension and stresses, there's enough stress within a marriage without adding things like a civil war and poverty and all these other things. So I can only imagine the kind of conversations as a husband and wife that they had.
Yeah.
It ended up in choosing, well, you'd be the one to go.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure those were some very difficult conversations. And like you said, you don't really realize the complexity and the depth of those conversations until you're older and, you're a spouse to somebody and you have children. And I'm sure your assumption is that at the time, based on the circumstances, it was probably the best case scenario for your family, possibly. But yeah, those are really tough conversations.
It coincidentally, my wife and I started having children. Well, I'm going to put it this way. My father and I were the same age when our first children were born.
Oh, okay.
So in that regard, we're sort of tracking. When our first daughter was born, I can see what was going on in my family, my marriage. And when my daughter turned 12, and this whole immigration thing, it's a pretty traumatic event. Okay, It really is. At least for me, it was.
Yeah.
When my daughter was 12 and at the age of that I was, so I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I was her age. And I was like her, and she, in many ways, is a lot like me. There's a lot of tendencies that I noticed in her that I had as a child. And I see her, like, oh my gosh, she's just a child. And here I am, I'm in the middle of building a career. And of course, if I have to shelf it and go to a new place where I can't speak and start again, totally new with zero idea how it's going to turn out, is frightening to think about.
Yeah.
Frightening to think about. And so as I see our family evolving and change, knowing that I'm tracking my father's age, I can see these different points in time and development in our children that I hope we were a little more mature than our children are, but I doubt it.
Yeah. What do you remember about the day that you left El Salvador when your dad said we're going to the States?
It was a long day. If I could, just a couple of days before, I got into, of course, I was saying goodbye to my friends a few days before. And I got into a couple of fist fights with a couple of kids at different times because they were basically teasing me that we were abandoning El Salvador and basically that we were coming to the U.S. and that we were going to be rich and therefore better than them. And I took offense to that because I didn't have a choice. Right. We have to go as a family. And so I remember, I don't know what happened, but I do remember having a couple of fist fights in the dirt. And coming home, bleeding and my dad getting upset at me. It's like, what? Why are you fighting? Basically. But on the day we left, we caught an early morning flight from El Salvador, San Salvador, to Mexico City, the international airport. And from there, we caught a regional flight from Mexico City to Tijuana. And so we landed in Tijuana sometime in the in the evening, sometime at night, and my dad rented a hotel room in some 4-story hotel. I mean, it was nothing fancy, and it was dark and dingy from what I remember. And he rented a room. We had our luggage there, and basically told the children to sort of, sleep, get some rest, and told us the plan that there would be a man. Somebody was going to pick us up from the hotel and drive us to my mother's in Los Angeles. And of course, I remember falling asleep. I did get rest. We had our luggage in the middle of the room, and the room was not very big. It really was not. It was a bedroom, basically. And we had our luggage there. This man showed up about 2 a.m, but 2, 3 a.m, woke us up. We pick up our bags, and the man said, "You're not bringing any luggage. Leave all that behind. You're leaving that." And I remember being upset at that because we had bought new clothes for go to school. We had new shoes there that we were going to use, when we go to school. So we had new things in the luggage, and of course we had all our clothes there. And he said, "Leave it behind." And so the 4 of us children just followed him, and we hugged my dad. In fact, let me back up a little bit. When the man was there, he came in and told us that we had to go. He told us to leave the luggage, and then he left the room and went downstairs. And then my father asked us all to kneel around the luggage and say a prayer. And so we knelt around the luggage, said a prayer. My dad offered the prayer for us to be safe, to arrive safely, to watch over us. And so when we said that prayer, we sort of hugged, cried, obviously a lot, followed the man downstairs. And then we got into the back. My dad came down with us, put us in the back seat of this car. And it was all 4 of us children along the back seat of the car. And in the front seat, it was the man, a child, and a woman. And the man told us to just sit down. We're just going to drive, just go to sleep. I was sitting directly behind the driver. And I had my youngest sister to my right, my younger brother to the right of her, and my younger sister at the other window. And the man said, "Well, this is, we're just going to drive." And so he told us to go to sleep. I couldn't go to sleep. So he just kept driving. And next thing I know, he stops at the border crossing at the booth. And he's having a conversation with the immigration officer there. And the conversation is in Spanish. And this is why I remember it. "Where are you coming from? How long have you been there? Why were you there? Where are you going? Who do you have in the car?" All these questions. And the driver is telling him, "This is my wife and children. We came to visit family. We're going to West Covina. That's where we live." Had that conversation and then just kept driving.
Wow. I'm just thinking of both your parents at one point. Your mom left her kids, and then your dad left you guys with this man, I'm sure hoping and praying that everything would go well. And I just have a lump in my throat just thinking about the emotions that your parents must have been going through at those different points when, they had to leave you guys. So he drives you across the border. And then what happened after that when he finally stopped?
Well, so he kept, obviously got admitted in. We kind of kept going, driving. Funny enough, he got a flat tire somewhere along the freeway. And it was kind of down the hill from a Denny's. And I remember stepping out of the car, and this was probably 6, 7 in the morning or earlier. So he told us just to go up step away from the road and just kind of go up. It was kind of like an off-ramp kind of hill. And so we kind of go up there and kind of see. And I remember being so cold. And this is in Southern California in November, being so cold. I've never been so cold in my life. And thinking, I couldn't believe that just 24 hours before I was in El Salvador and we're in the United States. And I remember very distinctly thinking, I'm in the United States. This is the United States. I can't believe it. And he got his tire fixed. We kept driving, went to his house in West Covina. He made some phone calls. He asked me to come in and call my mother. And my job, my dad asked me to memorize all these names and phone numbers and addresses. And so I had a list of maybe, I don't know, 5, 10 people or so that I had to memorize their names, addresses, and phone numbers. And so I knew all these numbers. And so this one, my mom's workplace, I couldn't reach her there. And then I called the landlady and I got a hold of her. And so we were there waiting. Finally got my mother on the phone and says, yes, I'm home. And I'll see you when you get here. This man's going to bring you home, bring you to me. And that's what he did. He drove us to where my mother lived. And it was sort of like, it was kind of like a mother-in-law apartment kind of thing. It wasn't a basement apartment. It was kind of off to the side and upstairs. And that was just an absolute, I was overcome with joy just to see my mother again after 19, 20 months. I can't remember, but an eternity it seemed like. But it was probably the most joyous feeling I've ever had to be reunited with her. And I know that my mother felt the same. She was very emotional. Obviously, we cried a lot. Just to be back together. But it was, to this day, is one of the most emotional things that I've ever experienced. And I'm emotional even thinking and talking about it.
Yeah. Wow. So after you were all reunited with your mom, what was like your daily routine like? Did you guys spend, several days together? And then was she like, okay, we have to get you all enrolled in school? What was that? How did that all unfold?
That part was a little, it's not so clear to me. I know that she brought us to her work. She was a housekeeper. And she brought us to her work, and she worked for this family in Beverly Hills on Coldwater Canyon Drive. I think it's called Creek or something, Coldwater Canyon Drive. And the lady of the house, her name was Jackie. They had a daughter that's probably 5, 6 years older than me. In fact, I believe she had just started driving, so she must have been 16, 17 years old, something like that. She was very kind, I remember, and we're friends to this day. I do remember sort of being in this house, in this beautiful house and beautiful things. It was a mansion as far as I was concerned. And I do recall that Mrs. Jackie took us to Nate and Al's Deli in Beverly Hills and took us for lunch. And I got a hot pastrami sandwich or something and on rye. How I remember this, I don't know. But I do remember because I had never had anything like it. And it was so good. And she told us, she spoke a little broken Spanish. And so she would tell us that you're going to be going to school, probably around here. And so she kind of told us, the lady told us what was going to happen. Then my mother's told us the same thing, that, her boss had basically not only recommended, but basically compelled her to say, you're going to enroll your children in the Beverly Hills School District, in the public schools in Beverly Hills. You will not allow them to go to the Los Angeles public school. And that little lie, and she told them, well, if they ask you, you tell them you're the living nanny. You're the living housekeeper. The family lives with us here in the guest house, in the pool house or something. And that was sort of the recommendation. And when my mother followed, we got enrolled in school. And in fact, when we showed up, I don't remember going to school right away. I believe we started school after the holidays. So I don't recall going and then breaking for Christmas and then coming back. Yeah. That's not how it worked.
So at that point, what were your thoughts about America?
Disappointed, underwhelmed.
And what was the reason?
We lived in a part of Los Angeles. You got to remember, this is late 1980s. We have moved into a part of Los Angeles that was not safe. It was poor, predominantly Black at the time. I had never seen anybody with skin with a darker complexion than mine. Or hair texture different than mine. So I was a bit of a culture shock. Obviously, the family my mother worked for, they were Jewish, Caucasian. Our neighbors were African-American. There was one family of Mexican, Chicano, they'd been Americans for generations, but they were obviously not African-American. And it was, crime and prostitution and gang violence and things like that. And that's why I say I was kind of disappointed and underwhelmed. Like, we left El Salvador, which was poor and violent because of the war, and now we're in a poor, violent place in the United States. Like, what was the point of all that?
Yeah.
And the only reason, and of course, you're 12 years old and you're thinking at least I wasn't happy that I don't have any friends. I can't even talk to people. So I was not happy.
How long did it take you to learn English?
So I got demoted back to 6th grade. I had to repeat 6th grade because I didn't speak English. And so I did 6th grade, 7th grade, and most of 8th grade, I was taking English as a second language classes. So I would be taking out of like art or shop or something. I didn't take those electives. I was learning English. And so probably in the better part of 2-3 years. But I remember it was in 8th grade, I do recall this because I went back into normal English class. Well, I had to read books and take spelling tests and vocabulary exams. I failed so many of them. I mean, I could not pass a spelling test just because I didn't know.
Right.
I did better with vocabulary, interestingly enough, mostly because of, when you read Spanish, some of the words, if it's Latin-based language, I can kind of figure it out.
Right.
But it was a passing grade. It was like a D or a C or something. I wasn't an A student then. So I would say about 2-3 years before I was speaking English enough. I was well enough in English that my parents would take me to go see an immigration lawyer.
And I'll get back to the schooling because obviously now you have a very successful career. But then you just mentioned the immigration lawyer. So I'm always interested too, how the immigration journey was for people. So do you remember getting your green card? Do you remember any of the immigration process at all?
Oh, yes, very well. In fact, I think I must have been 15 years old or so. In fact, about the age my daughter is now, our oldest. And going to seeing this immigration lawyer just on the south of downtown Los Angeles. And my parents said, "You're going to come with us and serve as an interpreter." I was like, "Sure, fine. I could do it." In hindsight, now as I sit here thinking back, here's an immigration lawyer who didn't speak Spanish. And I'm thinking, like, don't you want to speak Spanish so that you can communicate with the people? He didn't. And I remember going to his office, going back to see him in his office. And I remember it was his desk. It wasn't a conference room because he had on his desk different files and papers, similar to kind of what I have on my desk today. But behind him, this bookshelf of books. And I was so impressed. And he was a big man. He was just a big, obese man, huge. And he basically said, he just laid out the law requirements and the process. And of course, he would explain it to me and I would explain it to my parents. And my parents would have questions and I would ask the questions. And he would explain it again. And so this is how I remember these things. And so he said, well, what we're going to do is you don't have any family here that can claim you. So you're going to have to get immigration through work. And so, we're going to file this application. We're going to advertise in the newspaper for this long. We're going to have to pay these fees. And so he kind of laid out the process and he says it'll take about this long and we'll take it step by step. And so that's how he explained it. And we went back to him on multiple occasions. And so he would say, okay, we got this approved. Now we need to fill this out. And you need to pay this. And so that's how the whole process. Remember, eventually we did get an appointment where we needed to leave Los Angeles. We needed to leave the U.S., return to San Salvador because we had an appointment at the U.S. Embassy in San Salvador to be interviewed by some bureaucrat, some State Department official or something. And so we left. And now I'm fast forwarding now. This is my second semester, senior year in high school. So I'm just a few months from graduating high school. So I'm trying to think. I was maybe in 8th grade, 9th grade or something. So it took that long for us to go. And then the big fear was, well, what if you don't quote unquote pass
Right.
the interview. And then in that way, you stay in San Salvador,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that was the big concern and fear we had, that we went back to El Salvador. We did have the appointment. We were interviewed. One thing that came up, my father, when he crossed the border after us, he was arrested.
Mm.
And I don't know if he was deported or what, but when he was booked, he gave a false name. He gave the name of a friend. I think he might have been deceased.
Mm-hmm.
Name, but it was a false name. So he falsifies his identity there. And that was an issue. For some reason, I remember that being an issue that he had to correct or had to admit or something. And that was a fear we had. It turned out to be okay. The person said, you're fine. You're good to go back to Los Angeles. When you land there, you'll receive either your green cards or your Social Security cards will come in the mail or something. But basically, we got the green light. Go back to the United States. You're authorized to live in the United States.
Mm. Wow. I'm sure that was probably a very stressful thing, wondering and hoping that hopefully we pass this interview and all goes well and we can go back. And so before I get to the next question, how long was it after you guys arrived in California that your dad arrived?
It was probably about 2 weeks.
Mm.
So, I mean, we literally traveled. I mean, we met our mother within 48 hours after we left home.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty short. My father, because of the being arrested or detained or deported or something, he didn't come back until we didn't see him for another week or two.
I see.
Might be longer. I can't remember. It was a long time. We were concerned. I remember my mother being on the phone and listening to her talking about needing a couple of extra $1,000 to post bail or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I do recall that conversation she was having. I don't know who she was talking to, but I do recall that was a concern. Where do you come up with a couple grand?
Right.
It's a lot of money today. I mean,
yeah.
It's a lot of money too.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump back to your education. So it took a little bit for you to get the hang of things, learn English, and then obviously you excelled at school. So after graduating high school, what happened? Did you apply to college right away? Did you wait? What did you do?
I went to Beverly Hills High School,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of the kids were planning and did go to like UCLA, or a couple kids went to other well-known universities, and all of the juniors. I remember it was probably junior year. Can't remember if it was a senior year, but I remember all of us students had to, when we were considering university or after high school, we had appointments with a guidance counselor or some sort of person in an office to say, hey, what are your plans? And I wanted to go to university. And the lady asked me, oh, good. Well, where do you want to go? I said, well, I don't know. And I had no idea, zero idea I had never heard of financial aid. I had never heard of scholarships. I had never heard of any of that. But these kids, friends of mine in the football team and the track team, they're saying they want to go to school and college. This is Beverly Hills. Somebody's paying for that,
right.
And their parents or them, or I don't know how, but somebody's paying for that. I had no idea how, but they're doing it, so I want to do it. And I knew in high school, like, wait a minute, this guy's, again, I'm getting similar or better grades than this kid is, so why can't I?
Mm-hmm.
But I remember sitting there with a counselor, and she was asking me about, well, we can fill out applications for the University of California and the California State University system. 2 different applications, but basically 2 applications, and you can apply to like 10 schools within that network of schools. And so we were filling out, and she asked me, okay, what's your social security number? And I told her, I don't have one. Do you have a visa? And I said, no, I don't have a visa. And so she looked at me and understood that I was an undocumented illegal immigrant. And so she said, well, there's really not an option for you to go to these schools. Even if you could apply, I don't know that they would admit you because your immigration status. And so she said, well, the best thing you could do is take the SAT, see what score you get because you're probably going to need it. And you can go to the community college, here in Santa Monica. And so I said, well, okay, well, that's an option. He says, it is cheaper. You can get all your general education there and then transfer to a university once you get your green card. And she said, are you applying for a green card? And I told her that we were in the process. So hopefully we were. So that's what she recommended. And that's what I did. I took the SAT. And then after high school, immediately enrolled into Santa Monica Community College and just continued schooling that way.
What did you want to do?
It was funny. Because of the experience with the immigration lawyer, I wanted to become a lawyer. So in my head, I had this idea, this dream that I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to do what he did for two reasons. He was obviously helping us. I'm very grateful for that. But number two is that I knew what we were paying him. And so I was like, that's a hell of a lot easier than what my mom and I did. I mean, it took my parents a couple of weeks of working to pay him what he did in an hour. So it's like, I'd rather do that. They get paid well. I don't want to fix Xerox machines. Nothing's wrong with that. But my friends and their fathers were, copy machine, mechanics and things. I had it in my head. I wanted to be a lawyer. And I wanted to do immigration law, but I didn't know how. That's what I wanted to be in high school, as it turned out. I had this knack or talent, I guess, with architecture. And I took an architecture elective and kind of got high marks on it. And then I took, there was a second year for it, so I took the advanced course and did really well. Mr. Mahan, the architecture teacher, took a liking to me, and he said, well, I don't have other classes to teach you, but if you want to come back your senior year, you can be my teaching assistant, and I can teach you more things about architecture, but you'd have to help the other kids with their drafts and things. I'm like, great. And so Mr. Mahan encouraged this thing. He said, you're good at this. You could become an architect if you go to Cal Poly Pomona or Cal Poly San Luis Obispo or something. And so I had this, cool, and architecture, I was really into it. So when I went to Santa Monica College and I wanted to transfer, when it came time when I chose to transfer to University of California, Berkeley, I did it for a couple of reasons. One of them being is maybe I can go to the architecture school there. And so I went to Cal. And while I was at Cal, I enjoyed economics and international relations and political science. And Cal Berkeley was a very well-rounded education, but not good for any particular thing. So I decided not to. And the admissions to the architecture school at Berkeley was very, very competitive. So I didn't even apply to the architecture school. I was taking advanced trigonometry and derivative calculus. And I'm like, that's beyond me. I don't want to do that. So I stuck with economics and had continued to have this dream and this goal to be a lawyer. I focused on that. And I knew it doesn't matter what I graduate in at Berkeley, I am going to go to law school somewhere.
So you graduated Berkeley, and then what happened?
I worked for a year. I worked at the YMCA in Oakland, downtown Oakland. And then as I applied to law schools, I applied obviously to a lot in the Bay Area and up and down California. I don't recall applying anywhere in the Northwest or anything. And I got a phone call from a friend of mine who was at Brigham Young University Law School asking, hey, have I considered applying? And I had not. He persuaded me to do it. And as I looked into it, I thought, oh, yeah, for sure. So I applied there. I applied to University of Utah as well. I can't remember why University of Utah. I think it was they waived the application fee or something. It was some incentive. I said, if I'm going to be applying there, I might as well apply to this other place. And so when the admissions came in and the rejections came in and the wait list came in, and I looked at all my options, Brigham Young University was the best option for me. And that's where I went to law school. Best decision I ever made.
Yeah. So you realized your dream of going to law school and becoming a lawyer. And Simón, you and I know each other from years before. You didn't become an immigration attorney, but what did you end up doing?
This is interesting. In law school, I thought I would.
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually worked for an immigration firm in Seattle, Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of a civil rights employment from the employee side, immigration law firm. And it was small. It was great. I loved working there. Absolutely loved working there. Working with the people. But they couldn't bring me on after graduation. And so, and the other thing, and I did immigration work. I did visa waiver work. And as I was doing it that summer, I knew myself, and I knew sort of my tendencies and my interests. And I couldn't do it. I could not see myself doing this work for the next 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, I couldn't do it to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I just couldn't do it. So, well, luckily for me at the time, it didn't seem that way, but now looking back, it was the best thing that could have happened, because that option wasn't available anymore. I could not work for that firm.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to go back, and I got hired by a law firm downtown Salt Lake City. And that's how I ended up being in Salt Lake City, started litigating. Like most law school graduates, the law firm hires you and they tell you, this is what you will do.
Mm-hmm.
I remember talking to the managing partner, a great guy, a mentor of mine now, say, what if I want to do that? I want to do what that other lawyer does. That seems a lot more fun. He says, well, no, we hire you to be a litigator. You're supposed to be a trial lawyer. And I remember talking to him, saying, I know what you hire me to do. Okay. And, let me know if I'm not doing it good, because, they will tell you. But I want to try that. I want to try business litigation. I want to try business transactions. He said, well, that's not what we hire you to do. And so he looked at me and he kind of sat back and thought, I've never had a young lawyer asking to switch after they've hired me. You need to stay in your place. And I said, well, if I don't say anything, then I'll just be doing what I don't want to do. And I didn't sign up for that. Anyway, turned out he did let me do it. This is a wonderful man. He did let me explore. He did let me kind of follow in these different things. And so that's why I ended up not doing it and became a business lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
became a civil litigator, to a commercial business litigator, to a transactional lawyer, to a corporate counsel. So this evolution, this change over the years has been because I'm doing what I want to do, not because of somebody's telling me what I should do. I enjoy it. I love doing it. It's great.
So right now you are in-house counsel, right?
Yes.
And how have you enjoyed that?
It's wonderful. Yeah. It's great. Oh yeah. I miss being in the law firm. You're surrounded by very intelligent, very motivated, high achieving people, but also very, they know one way of the world. In other words, they know one aspect of business life. And in the law firm setting, I enjoy that camaraderie with attorneys of all different kinds of experiences, practice focuses, expertise. I don't get that in a corporate legal department, not in the same way. Mm-hmm. But it's so much more, at least for me, appealing when I'm talking to accountants and financial planners, or basically MBAs and CPAs and people like that who see the world very differently, or salespeople or marketing people. That is such a rich place to learn. And that's what I love about it. I learned so many things and think about things I never would have thought about, or see things I never would have seen, and make decisions based on information that I didn't know.
Right.
That's what I enjoy about it.
So you had mentioned when you first came here, you were very underwhelmed. And then fast forward through your schooling, your career, and you've obviously accomplished a lot and had a successful career. How do you feel about America now versus if your family would have stayed in El Salvador?
I don't know what would have happened if it would have stayed in El Salvador. I think about that from time to time. It's scary to think what would have happened, not only to me, but to my parents, to my family. I don't know. Maybe we would have been okay. Maybe not. I don't know. How I feel about America now is very different from what I felt when I first came. I love this country. I I love what it stands for.
Mm-hmm.
I love that there are institutions in place. This is something that I do not take for granted. Okay, people would respect and behave uh, respecting a law. They would honor that. They sort of would expect people to behave the same way. That you will not be infringing on my property or legal rights or life. We just go about our business. I do work for you. You say you're going to pay me, and I expect that I do the work and you'll pay me. Little things like that multiplied over millions and billions of times. It's phenomenal to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's mind blowing to me that this place has a culture, that the country has a culture based on institutions, that the law is sort of that's the cover that holds everything together.
Mm-hmm.
People behave in a way that they respect that this thread of law holds people together. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And this country, for all its flaws and rooms for improvement, is still, to me, in my mind and in my experience, a place where you can have improbable or seemingly impossible things actually become reality.
Yeah.
I had a dream. Like, I really did have a dream and a goal, and it took me half my life to get it, but I did become it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what kind of a lawyer I am, whether I'm any good, that's besides the point. But the path was laid out there.
Yeah.
And it was because the law allowed you to do it, and the institutions allow you or promote you to do it. That's what I love about that. So I have a reverence for the laws of the country and for the country for which it stands.
Yeah, I agree. I once in a while I'll think about, if my family was still in Vietnam, what would I be doing? I certainly would not be sitting here talking to you right now, obviously, and I wouldn't be a lawyer. I have no idea what I would be doing. I mean, my parents didn't grow up with a lot of money. They didn't even finish elementary school. So I don't know what would have happened to me. I might have followed a similar path to them. So I do very much respect this country as well, and the opportunities that it provides for people.
One thing that I've noticed in my life, I mentioned that where I went to school in Beverly Hills High School, I mean, it's a very affluent people there.
Mm-hmm.
But I also lived in the very poor part. I mean, in the ghetto, very poor, and I noticed that ability alone will not make it happen. It just isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Because the types of opportunities, the number of opportunities, even recognizing that something is an opportunity, or have the resources or help to seize those opportunities, are not available to the most talented or most intelligent in these disadvantaged environments,
Yes.
whether it's a disadvantage at home or community or whatever. So I noticed that you will advance in large measure too, not only by your natural abilities and willingness to work, reliability and work ethic, but you really do need, I know I did, benefited from a lot of help.
Yes.
I benefited from people who took an interest in me,
Mm-hmm.
and those things matter as much, if not more, than your abilities or your desire. And so that's something that it's not available to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so look, I'm privileged, okay? In comparison to the general population, I am privileged. And the reason for that is because I got a lot of help along the way.
Mm-hmm.
People who took an interest in me. I was very fortunate. I had two parents who gave me confidence and loved me and pushed me and encouraged me. And I had that reinforcement by, my mom's boss and her husband and all these other people, whether it was a church or whether it was neighbors or whether it was friends of the family or something. That is just as important. And I think that's why any chance we have to help people,
Mm-hmm.
Encourage them to follow something and not give up, that we ought to take that opportunity. And it's kind of part of the reason why I'm sitting here talking to you, but hopefully somebody who listens to this will take heart and have hope.
Yeah, I certainly definitely agree with that sentiment too. It's, that saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. That goes into a lot of ultimately what a person ends up becoming as well.
And not only for immigrants, obviously immigrants, because they come in from a different perspective. I mean, first generation immigrants like myself, and I think you too, it's a different struggle, but it's not just unique to immigrants. I mean, we have people who were born and raised in this country. And the one thing that I always enjoy reading, and it's something that we ought to look at, if you look at those people in high places, whether it's the CEO of a company, whether it's a judge, whether it's a politician or something, some people who are high achieving, and you look at their backgrounds, where they came from, what they had to do to get there, a large number of them have had to overcome adversity, sometimes very serious adversity, to reach the places where they are. And that's what this country is about. It doesn't flow necessarily from the children of the neuroscience doesn't become the governor, or the child of the physicist or the child of the money manager doesn't become necessarily the next CEO. It doesn't always happen that way. Yeah. It's the son of the shoemaker. It's the housekeeper's daughter. It's the farmer's, the poor farmer's son who becomes the next surgeon. And that story permeates our country all over the place, and people of high places.
Yeah. What would you say is the thing that you're most proud of accomplishing here?
That's a good question. I'll be honest with you. I have a good career, okay? But that's not something I've necessarily accomplished. It sort of has happened. It's corny. The biggest accomplishment, as far as I'm concerned, this is individual to me. I have a healthy and a loving relationship with a woman I love and who loves me. And I have a healthy and loving relationship with 3 daughters I love and who love me. I have a lot of people who love me and I love them back. It takes work, and that matters to me above everything else. And I've made career choices with that as a principle, and it's never gone wrong for me. Yeah. It hasn't been easy, but it's been certainly worth it.
All right. And my last question for you is, what do you remember the last thing your dad told you that maybe, let's see, how do I want to phrase this? What was the last thing that you remember him saying to you that made you feel like that you had accomplished what he had hoped that you would do?
It's a difficult question to answer just because the memory of that conversation with my father is still pretty raw. But him, I remember on his birthday, thanking him for bringing us here. And that I was very, very happy with the work that I'm doing, where I'm working, the people I'm working with, happy with the family that I have. And I could tell that he was very happy to hear that. Yeah. And I think that's what he wanted. Yeah. And I think he's I don't think he regrets taking those difficult decisions.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Simón, for sharing your beautiful story with us and for digging deep and being willing to share those very emotional times. And I think that it will resonate a lot with people who may be going through the same things or who have had very similar experiences. And I can tell you that with, just listening to your story, it reminds me of how much my parents also sacrificed to make sure that their kids were successful, even though they may not have been able to live to their full potential just because of the circumstances, but that they worked as hard as they could to give their kids the opportunity to have a pathway to success. So your story was absolutely beautiful. and I could really feel the emotions that you were going through throughout your life, throughout the stories that you told us. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Lynn. You're welcome.
If you like what you've been hearing on this podcast, share it with others and leave us a comment or review wherever you're listening to it. Also, remember to subscribe so you can hear our upcoming episodes.